And I'm going to lean in here so you can kind of hear me. This is Anna Zevarts with Disability Mobility Initiative. And we're here in Tacoma today, outside of the apartment complex where Crystal Monteros lives. And she's going to talk a little bit about some of the sidewalk access issues that she faces here in Tacoma. Crystal is on the Commission for People with Disabilities. You're the vice chair, is that right?
I'm chair now.
Oh, chair.
Yes.
She's chair. And she lives here in Tacoma. So I'm going to turn it over to Crystal to talk a little bit about what it's like to try to navigate this part of Tacoma.
So my name is Crystal Monteros. I am chair of the Tacoma Area Commission on Disabilities, and I live right here across the street. So I've lived here probably for a little over 5 years now, but when I first came to this area, I was trying to find an apartment complex just anywhere within my, I guess within my price range, and I realized within this area there's a very limited amount of apartments that are within my price range and that are wheelchair accessible as well. And it's weird because they had apartments that were wheelchair accessible, but wheelchair accessible from the outside in, meaning like with the sidewalks, with like me being able to get to the apartment like from the outside in, and then actually having the apartment be wheelchair accessible itself. Like all of that. And apartment complexes, we're thinking like, oh, we're good just because we have an accessible unit. If I can't access get to the unit, then what good is it actually being wheelchair accessible? You know, and there's so many apartment complexes like back to back in this area. It was just so hard for me. Like this specific spot that I'm in right now, there's no sidewalk underneath me. It's a gravel. And I live across the street, but my issue is like there's a bus stop right here. I don't got transportation and I use the bus stop. But when it's snowing outside, I literally have to have my neighbors come and help me get through this area that there's no sidewalk in and everything. I can't do it independently, even though I live independently on my own. You know, so I've had to learn how to navigate that on my own. And with that, it's like it gets so hard sometimes because there's so many apartment complexes where it's like they have accessible units where, I mean, the bathroom is perfectly fine, the bedrooms are perfectly fine, but the thing is, whether it's heels or whether it's like the gravel like this or no curb cuts or anything, those are the things that are blocking me from actually getting to those accessible units. You know, but if these things are just changed, then my life it would be so much easier and it would have way more options available to me, you know, within my price range, you know, but.
Yeah. And so do you want to talk about the snow and like what happened here? Yeah.
That's a good point. So we're in Washington State, right? And I mean, it doesn't snow a lot in Tacoma, but it snows. All right. And I mean, in the time that I've been here, there's probably been like 3 years maybe where the snow has piled up pretty big. And I mean, doing all the work that I do, I have my meetings, I have everything that I need to do, right? And I take the public bus. This is the bus stop that I usually go to, right? I mean, you can't just take one side of the street and not the other. You have to go and you have to come. So this side doesn't have the sidewalk on this little section, right? The snow piles up on this little section. And it's like, if I can't get through this little section with the snow being piled up on it, that when it's like, I don't know, like 2-3 inches of snow, then I literally have to have a neighbor come and help me through the snow. Or if I can't have a neighbor come help me through the snow, then I have to have like just a random person that just happens to walk by push me through the snow, which sometimes being real, sometimes I can't even get through the snow even with help, because my wheels aren't big enough. So it is a mission sometimes, you know. But yeah, I faced my difficulties with that. But it's a lot easier when there's sidewalk. But
Awesome. Well, thank you.
most definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So Crystal's just one of the 100. Let's see if I can get myself in the shot. 100 of people in Washington who we interviewed over the last couple of months as part of our story map, our transportation story map created by Disability Rights Washington. And so we've interviewed folks from every single legislative district who can't or don't drive for whatever reason about our transportation needs. And Crystal was one of those interviews, and we encourage you to check out more of those interviews at mobilizewa.org. There's two main themes that emerge with these interviews. First, that we need reliable and accessible public transit all throughout our state. And the second theme is we need the sidewalks to get there, right? We need to be able to access public transit. And we need the infrastructure to be able to do that. And so we are calling on our legislature to invest in public transit service and to invest in sidewalks and accessible crossings so we can all go where we need to go in our communities to participate and to be part of our communities. So next I want to introduce Paulo Nunez, who works for Front and Centered, and we'll get out of the way here and I'll let you talk about your work.
All right.
Yeah.
This is so odd to be speaking into a verb.
All right.
Hi, everybody. My name is Paulo, and I'm working with Front and Centered, which is a coalition of BIPOC groups from all over Washington State. And I'm working. Front and Centered works on environmental justice issues, and I'm working on the transportation and land use. Really, I think what our message is that what you're seeing behind me here, this is really unfinished business, right? This has to be a priority for the state. This has to be a priority for cities to be able to make a transportation system that provides people with safety and with dignity. And what a lot of people don't know is that the reason why these things are unfinished, why we have this huge backlog of unfinished sidewalks, of bike lanes that don't exist, of accessibility issues, is because of Jim Crow era laws that we're still working under in Washington State that makes it so that we can't invest money that's raised from gas tax to provide for these facilities, to make the connections that everybody is going to need at some point in their life to get safely to a bus stop, to get safely to across the street. And if you're a child who doesn't drive, this is a big issue. So what we're working to do is to create, I guess what we're saying is that we can do better. We can do much better than this, and we need to start by prioritizing where our investments are needed. Instead of laboring under these rules that were made in 1944, I'm speaking specifically about the 18th Amendment of the Washington State Constitution that says that no money from gas tax can go to anything but highway purposes. And that was fine when we were building out the highways, but we're done. And now, this is not done. This is unfinished business that needs to get done, and it needs to be prioritized. But we have this rule from 1944 that keeps it so that the vast majority of dollars goes into highways. And it makes it really difficult for us to prioritize these kinds of investments and these kinds of things that are clearly needed. Look at this. This is, how do we find this at all acceptable? Next to this beautiful road, this 4-lane strode. Actually, make that 5-lane strode. Oh, here's the Pierce Transit bus. Let me make sure I get out of the way so that folks can join. Well, actually, the bus didn't stop. So, Anna, what's next?
Are you good?
I'm done.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
This is a very strange format for a press conference. So next we have Tracy Ostro with Downtown on the Go. And that's
Okay, great.
As loud as you can.
I don't have to crouch too much. Hi everyone, my name is Tracy Oster. I am Executive Director of Downtown on the Go. We are Tacoma's transportation advocate and resource. And we're excited to be here to just partner with everyone who is really trying to make this, who really wants to talk about transportation justice, mobility justice. So we know that transportation is about connecting people, right? And so quality transportation systems, they get us to our jobs, to school, to friends and family, to critical services. And everyone deserves the right to have those choices for those connections. And a missing piece of a sidewalk or a broken sidewalk isn't just an inconvenience to some people, it actually is a barrier to how they can get around. How we get around determines how freely we can live our lives. So having all those choices are just really important. Lost my train of thought, so sorry. Anyway, so we know that without a full array of transportation choices, without mobility justice, that not everybody has those same options, and no one should not have those transportation options because of inaccessible infrastructure. I would like to acknowledge that Tacoma City Council has funded some efforts recently, Vision Zero, Safe Routes to Schools, and those are great and those are very important. But we also know those are really just kind of band-aids for small pieces of what's happening, and that really there needs to be systemic change. Now I would like to introduce you to Tacoma City Council member, Beal. Yep, how are you?
Well, thank you everybody, and thanks for being here. We're out here on a really busy road, big 5-lane arterial. My name is Chris Beal. I'm a city council member here for the city of Tacoma. This is part of my district. We're on the Lakewood side of the road here. But I really appreciate the groups that have come together, and for Crystal as part of our Disabilities Commission in highlighting the problem that we have with pedestrian mobility and investment in pedestrian mobility and transit access. And it's a really, really important issue for our transportation system here in the city. And we have a lot to do in terms of investment in that infrastructure. Just as an example, around the corner on 56th Street, we've built a big, wide lane arterial roadway and haven't invested in the same width for sidewalk and pedestrian mobility as we have for cars. And a lot of our standards need to be updated to reflect best practices for pedestrians.
They're having a hard time hearing you.
Okay.
A little louder into this mic here.
Oh, okay.
Get in there nice and close.
I'm going to get in here nice and close. Sorry that you can't hear me. So I think we really need to do a lot more on pedestrian mobility and particularly for folks with disabilities, mobility issues, for all of our community, but particularly for folks that have disabilities and mobility issues. And Crystal really spoke loudly for those communities that are affected by those issues. And I think that it really highlights the fact that we're still not, we've got a lot of really good policy, but we aren't investing as heavily in pedestrian mobility as we should be. And so, we really, I would call on our Public Works Department at this time to really reevaluate how people are accessing transit, how people are getting around in our cities when they don't have cars. And we really need to double down on that investment. We need to double down on investing in transit access. As you can see here, busy transit stops. We're making these investments and moving some of our transit stops as part of the Pierce Transit's bus stop realignment, but we're not proactively and cooperatively planning with those efforts to make sure that all of our transit stops have access and people have dignity, with covered shelters and covered stops. And we need to continue to work on those issues as well. So I'm just really appreciative, for everybody that's come out here today. Want to continue to advocate for, the changes that we need to make. Transit access and pedestrian mobility is going to become more and more important if it already isn't already. And we've still got a crisis on our arterial roadways, like this one right here, 56, where people can't even get around and get safely to where they need to go in terms of services and just basic mobility issues. So I could go on and on. This is a really important issue that I'm very passionate about, and I hope to follow up with our Disability Rights Commission, front and centered, and Disability Rights Washington to continue to develop policy and to continue to budget for these improvements and investments. So I think that's it. I can answer any questions, but I'm going to turn things back over